Welcome back to 2023 and episode 13 of Show and Tell. This is just my small adventure to highlight different creators related to and around the Magic community. Today is a little different because instead of interviewing a Magic content creator, I am very excited to be interviewing a content creator that plays Magic. I am joined by video game designer, tabletop RPG designer, podcast host, Kevin Cole. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Drew, thank you so much for having me on.
If you don't know, Kevin, off to a great start there. Kevin is involved with, all sorts of projects from Pretend Friends, a Space Kings-based podcast, which we'll get into. He's designed games. I was researching, and I know there was a period where you were designing like a game a month, I felt like.
Yeah.
I think it was like a...
Yeah, in 2020, I made one video game every month, which was a lot.
Yeah, that's... I can barely do these episodes like once a month, and this is like an hour thing.
Yeah.
So one game, we'll definitely get into that. Contributor to, I believe, the Continue Cast, which is the Continue Boys, which it's another YouTube show where they basically play a game for about half an hour, kind of tell you if they continue or game over, if they like it or not. Their podcast actually has been one of my favorite podcasts. Hasn't been around for a while. Hasn't been out for a while. But definitely the back catalog alone is worth a check out via their, I think, Patreon.
Yep.
So before we get into that, like I said, I kind of told Kevin beforehand, I'm very excited to have him on. I'm a little starstruck because in my eyes, he's a really big deal in kind of like my world. So I'm trying to keep professional.
I'm just a big dummy. Don't worry. I forget what the card. I forget to read the cards all the time. So don't be too stars.
Okay, so speaking of cards, speaking of Magic, so tell me about your relationship with Magic. When you started playing, what kind of got you into the game? What you're into playing now these days?
Yeah. So I started with 7th edition.
Okay.
When I think it must have been like 12 or 13 or something like that. My family, I have an older sister, and she had a lot of nerdy friends, and they were all playing Magic. And my parents were like, "Oh, Kevin likes games. He's collected Pokemon cards for a bit. Maybe we get him some Magic cards for a wacky Christmas present." And that sort of like that. I was like, "Yeah, these cards are cool. Some of them are scary. Some of them, might have a little bit of cleavage on them. Like, what is this? This isn't Pokemon. What is this?" And then I started reading the books, and I was just kind of collecting the cards in the background for a long time. And then in late middle school, I finally I went to the Darksteel pre-release with with my older sister's friends, because they were like, "Oh, Kevin plays Magic. We'll take him to a pre-release. It'll be great." And I had just a fantastic time. And I sort of fell off Magic for most of high school, I think. I did actually still continue to make decks, and I carried a couple decks in my pockets, and I was big into theater, and I would play like Magic the Gathering games silently backstage while waiting to jump on and remember my lines. But I was very, very casual in high school, and then when I went off to college, I started falling in love with playing tournaments and stuff again. And I couldn't come up with a Father's Day present for my dad, and Lorwyn was out, and I was at a GameStop looking for like something for him, and they had all these Lorwyn packs, and I'm like, I guess I could get my dad into Magic. And now that's our football. Like we used to go to pre-releases together. We were often mistakenly referred to as the Cole brothers, but and then later corrected to the Cole family. We did a lot of pre-releases together in the Massachusetts area, which is a tough area to do pre-releases in because of the MIT concentration. We have a lot of pro players in the Massachusetts area. So
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so pre-releases are pretty brutal. I never really charted very high, but I always had fun. And these days I play a lot of Commander. Like
Yeah.
I play a lot of Commander. I brew a lot of Commander decks, always in paper. I always want to be at a kitchen table, but
Yep.
I don't do tournaments so much anymore. It's just, kitchen table Magic with my friends. Like if anyone puts a $70 card on the table, they're either mocked relentlessly until they're like, it was just in a pack. It was just in a pack.
That's funny. Wow. So you got your dad into playing. That's actually that's pretty incredible. I could relate to like never knowing what to get my dad for Christmas or his birthday because at this point he's either he just buys it himself because he's an adult man. Like that's, you get to a point,
right?
Or my dad has no. Well, I shouldn't say he's got no hobbies. He's become a trained dad. He just recently
cool.
retired. Yeah, and it's cool. He's talked about it my whole life. He's always talked about, I'm going to build a setup. I'm like, okay, Dad. Like, and my dad. So it's really funny when I think about my father compared to me, because my dad growing up, like, was the jock. He played a bunch of sports or everything, and I played sports growing up. But like, I played sports because he made me.
Yeah.
But I wanted to play video games and cards. So I was never into like. He was never understood the nerdy stuff. But now, he has 2/3 of his garage, his house is now a giant train city. So I'm like, okay, so that's where it is. That's where the kind of nerdiness. It's just a different outlet. So
yeah, that's just a stone's throw away from Warhammer or D&D miniatures. It's just trains.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I definitely think he understood the cards thing. I think he understood more than like the video game thing because the collecting aspect. He was like, because he collected like sports cards.
Yeah.
So I think he got that. But it's just funny like how a lot of times we just end up like our parents. It's no matter how hard we try, like it's like, oh yeah, like sometimes I see photos of my dad when he was younger, and I'm like, oh, where was this? I don't remember going to this, and I've been told by my grandparents like, oh, that's your dad.
Oh man.
So like it's like, oh, okay, that's a little scary, but I digress. So got your dad into playing.
Yep.
So does your dad still play? You guys still get to play together?
Yeah, every we usually buy a box of the winter set every year, and that's his birthday present. We'll just do sealed and just make fun decks and throw them at each other. We had a lot of fun with Brothers War. We've bought a few packs of Brothers War, and there are a few sets we skip. He like counts on me to kind of like scope out pre-release season. And I'll be like, this one, this one's pretty good, or this one's all right. He does play Commander, and he will play Commander with me and my friends. But sometimes Commander can just like get a little out of control. He's like, I don't know what is happening on this board. Can somebody just cast a board wipe so I can understand what to do now?
Yeah.
So
he
plays Karametra is his current.
Okay, that's
fave.
a pretty classic Commander, I think. Karametra. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
What are your? I know. I think we've talked about this on Twitter and kind of beforehand. You're a big mono black guy.
Love mono
I know,
black. Yeah.
I would say probably is your favorite Toshiro Umezawa. Is that your kind of like your go-to sort of? So tell me about that deck. Like what is the plan with that deck?
Yeah, so Toshiro Umezawa, and I don't want to be hipster about this, but I do think I was singing the praises of Toshiro before Tomer of MTG Goldfish was singing the praises of Toshiro. But I love Toshiro. He's a mono black spell slinger deck, which is not very common.
No, not at all.
What he does is he will give a card in your graveyard flashback when an opponent's creature dies. So basically you're playing mono black control, which makes most commander tables groan. But it is a deck where you constantly have to be on and engaged in what is happening and assessing threats and making decisions, and everything you have is hidden information. I have an empty board most of the time and just a lot of mana set up. And like it's a lot of like draw go style play where like I draw my card and I look at it and I'm like, okay, pass turn. Cause I'm not like, sometimes I don't have creatures out until the very end when I've killed enough creatures to steal from my opponent's graveyards to just trample over them. It's a very difficult deck for folks to interact with and understand and get a good idea of what you're doing. So it's hard for people to be like, Kevin's the threat. And he's like, I don't have anything on my board. How am I the threat? And if you attack me, I'm going to kill a thing with this card that you can't see. So there's a lot of bluffing. There's a lot of everything I like in Toshiro Misawa, and I just had a good feeling about the card, and it turned out it's exactly the kind of thing that I like to play. So that's sort of my Toshiro story.
No, it's funny. I knew I liked you when I had seen you talking about the deck before, because I always have been a big fan of that card. Because I can remember, I call it my third renaissance, when a lot of Magic players, you'll play for a while, you'll kind of take a break. I think the third time I came back was my freshman year of college, was right when Champions of Kamigawa came out.
Mm-hmm.
So for all of us kind of get back into the game, and we're all just like, oh, well, like samurais and eventually ninjas and everything.
Yeah.
And I remember I was a really big black player as well, and that was one of those cards that I was like, oh yeah, this is every deck. And this is like pre-Commander. This is multiplayer, but it'd be like, oh, who's not in class, who wants to play? And sometimes it'd be 3 guys, sometimes it'd be like you'd be doing these 7-player free-for-all games of just like, good luck, like figure it out. But that was always one of my favorite cards to play, for kind of the reason you highlighted, the kind of the black control aspect, where like being able to double cast your instants when creatures died.
Yeah.
Remember, I played a very big removal suite, I guess, which is called these days. But a lot of flexibility, and kind of be able to kind of catch people off guard with that card was always very fun. So
it's just the number one critique of like, here, I just made a deck. What do you think of it? It's like, there's not enough interaction. There's not enough removal. It's like you have very little problems running into. You have no problem drawing a removal spell in Toshiro, which I find to be very good.
Which is good, because I know people should run. It's almost very controversial sometimes to say people should run more removal, but that is a conversation for another forum. Probably a more aggressive one, but
and I would say Toshiro is not the type of deck where it can just hold down 3 people at once and beat on them. That's not that. If you try playing Toshiro like that, you're going to run out of cards in your hand. You have to be political. You have to bluff. You have to, make your opponents their own worst enemies, because you don't have the gas. You are a Spellslinger deck. Like, you don't have the gas to, and you're in mono black, so you don't have all the Spellslinger enablers, unless you really want to shell out for some cards. But it's I would say I have played against my own deck, because I think that's an important thing for a person to do. I have given my deck to a friend, and I've taken their deck, and I've played against my setup, and it can be a win out of nowhere deck on occasion, because I was in college for the days of New Phyrexia and Infect and all that stuff. So I've got a Tainted Strike in that deck. So
you got and sometimes it's like you need ways to win the game. Sometimes like
game's got to end.
Game's got to end, exactly. So nothing wrong with that. 10 damage out of nowhere. Flash it back, like kill a few people. There you go. Like that's just Magic, right? That's what you got to do.
It is. I will say my Toshiro deck is pretty miserable to play 1-on-1 with somebody, especially if they're playing a creature focused deck. But in Commander, there's at least one creature that you should be killing. So
yeah, definitely. And that's it's funny. That's I think that's a very underrated statement. Like 1v1 Commander versus typical Commander, which around 4 players or so.
Yeah.
It's a very different world, and unless you're really trying to be a pain, like most strategies do get offset by, making 3 other players have to deal with you if it's too out of control. So I think I say this, but it's with the way how many cards and interactions are out there. There's easy enough ways to do this, but typically, like, as long as people kind of keep everyone in check, like it should for the most part be. So easy enough to deal with, but you never know. It's
and 1v1 Commander is janky, but sometimes I'm visiting my dad and he's like, hey, you want to play Commander? And I'm like, sure. Like, it's fun. Like, or I'll be at a bar with a friend and they'll be like, I brought my Commander deck. I'm like, I brought mine. So we'll just go for it. I don't really do local game shops or anything like that. I don't do like Commander days, which sound really fun. It's just I have enough people in my life that play Commander. I don't really need to shop around that much. So I kind of take Commander where I can get it.
Yeah, I feel I've kind of talked before on this show is I don't really have a play group. I have some friends who are very slowly kind of, we play multiple games, but they've kind of started to show interest in Magic. So I was like, well, let's try Commander, and trying to massage that interest. Don't really have a local store I can go to. So I get Commander where I can too, and it's, and you kind of had mentioned being able to play paper Magic. It's a completely different experience, really. Than like, I don't know if you've dabbled in like Arena or even Moto at all.
I just know that I need to look my opponents in the eyes when I Doomblade their stuff. So
yeah, well, you know what? That is definitely not the experience you can get on Arena. Now you can spam your Go a bunch, which may kind of induce the similar levels of salt, but it's in a very like not as sportsmanlike way when you do that. So I think being able to look them in the eyes really kind of puts you in the moment, right?
Yeah, I think it is the civility I like in face-to-face Magic, because I could tell, when someone was annoyed at a loss in real life, but like I could kind of like check them, like, you good, man? Like, this is a game, this is a fun thing, and they can't legally throw a punch at me. So
That's true. And you know what? There's, without getting too into it, but like there's a weird thing that the anonymous nature of like online games gives people, and you see it all the time on like Twitter or Reddit, or just people do and say a lot of things when their real names aren't attached to the comments they would not do in real life, right? Yeah. So it could be things can get a little wild.
I drive a car and live in Boston, Massachusetts. I know what anonymity does to the human mindset. It can get ugly.
Yes, I'm sure you could probably write many books on the topic. Oh man. So Kevin, there's so much I want to go over with you, because you're just such a Renaissance man when it comes to what you do.
Thank you.
So outside of Magic, you also we kind of touched on it, are a video game designer. I know one of your biggest releases, I guess I say recent, but time has no meaning anymore. Hack was a very big game of yours that came out. Yeah. How long has that been out now? Is it? I'm almost scared to ask.
So we recently in Thanksgiving of 2022. No, yeah. What year is it? Okay, yeah. All right, it's 2023 now. Thanksgiving 2022, Hack turned 5 years old. So Hack is over 5 years old now. That is also when Pretend Friends started. I forgot that I released Hack and started Pretend Friends like in the same month. So that's
wow.
I don't recommend releasing a 2-year-long project and then starting another multi-year long project right away.
I don't. So if people listening, I don't think you realize, like, if you as someone who like follows Kevin on Twitter and just like kind of you see how their lives are just through tweets. I don't know how you have time in the day. Like, you seem like you're always working on something, and it's always like you're always just going so hard. And I don't know when you sleep. I don't know if you do sleep. That might be a thing. Do you sleep? Have you?
I do. I sleep 10 hours. I sleep 10 hours a night. Like I get so much sleep.
That's good. Well, that's sometimes you worry about these. People kind of get into stuff, and it's just like, I don't. You work late in the night or. Yeah. Depending on your work schedule, but like, okay, I'm glad to hear you're sleeping.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of rest. This is my full-time gig. I do make games and I make podcasts full-time, and that I've been doing that. It'll be 10 years this year. I've been doing games and on podcasts full-time, and working for myself. It's I've only been living I've only been paying my own rent for like 1.5 of those years, so it's but I am paying my rent now.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's talk about it's everywhere you go, right? I live in Southern California, so housing prices here are ridiculous. I can't imagine really Boston being that much better, but
it's not great.
Yeah, right. It's just just being able to do that is an accomplishment. I actually would say being your full-time gig as a creator, video game, 10 years, that's an accomplishment of it itself. Like,
Thank you.
That's impressive. I've worked dumb, like, retail jobs in my current, I've never hit 10 years on anything. So, props to you, my man, for 10 years. That's awesome.
Thank you. I hadn't. I honestly, I try not to think about it because I feel like I'm never where I want to be. I'm always just trying to get somewhere else, and that's not a good way to think about things. I'm super proud of the stuff I make. I just need to remember to be proud of my progress and all the things I make. And I feel like if there's a light criticism to make of myself is that I do too many things. I could linger on some things a little more. But Hack was my first big video. It was my first video game that I asked money for after it was done. So I started off with in 2013 I quit my job in anger and then had to be told that I quit my job by a coworker. And
okay.
I was like, oh, I did, huh? Oh, yeah, I did say that. Oh, okay. I was like, well, I was pretty unhappy. What would be a thing that would make me happy? And I've been working on this game. I'd never released a video game before, but in my free time, I would just like go to the bar and open my tiny netbook and just code this video game. And then there's this new thing called Kickstarter. And I asked Kickstarter for some money, and the internet said sure. And I got a little bit of money. I moved back to my parents' place, and I made my first game, Project Maiden, which has immense first album energy. It's not like it's not the greatest thing in the entire world, but it did teach me everything about making games. So a lot of people say don't do your passion project as your first project. Do anything that makes you want to make the thing is my philosophy. Like don't save anything for later. You might not get to it. So
that's a good philosophy. I mean, I guess I do this. I'm a photographer by, I don't know if trade. I'm technically, I do photography, but it's the same thing. Like it's the artist's curse, right? You're probably never really satisfied with anything you do.
Yeah.
And additionally, it's always, you're always starting new projects before maybe you should.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that. Yeah. If you're going to do something, like why, if you have a project, like why wait for that later? Like why not go? Cause what your energies and time, if you have the time and energy to do it, like why not engage with it when you can, right?
Yeah. And I had my passion project. I didn't know how to make a video game because I'd never done it yet.
Yeah.
I just knew how to sort of mess around in Game Maker. And suddenly I had accepted money from several internet strangers and friends, a lot of friends. Honestly, a third of my first Kickstarter was just people I met in college who just wanted to see me succeed, which was really gratifying.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
I moved back home and I started making the thing. And then I finished the first thing, which was Project Maiden, and then I started Hack. In between Project Maiden and Hack, I didn't know if I wanted to make video games anymore because I'd completely I'd blown out my tendons with RSI after my first video game. And, and I was like, this could be a problem for my health. I have to remember to never I have to remember to not put my health before I have to remember to put my health before my creativity because that's important. So then I made Hack, and in the process of making Hack, I met a bunch of interesting people. I made friends with the Continue guys, and by the time Hack released, we had become really good friends. And they were like, "We're doing all these podcasts and stuff. Do you want to do a podcast together?" And I was like, "I have an idea of what we could do." Because when I moved back, I started up my old role playing group. We used to play Prometheans, which is a White Wolf World of Darkness game that I love. And I was like, we're getting the old Prometheans group back together. We started playing D&D 4th edition, and it was not a good fit for our group. Though there are some there are some legitimately good parts of 4th edition, like the monster manual is incredible. But they're like, we need something simpler, but we don't really want to play Prometheans. We kind of figured out Prometheans. We don't really want to play it that much. I'm like, well, I could make a thing. I'm a game designer now. Like I recently came home to make games. Why don't I just make a tabletop role playing game? And I put together like a Microsoft it wasn't even a Microsoft Word. It was an open office document, and started writing down ideas for a tabletop RPG that used playing cards instead of dice because I was tired of rolling low. And so kind cut 9 years later, this in late summer, early autumn, we finally shipped the Space Kings book, which is available now at spacekings.space if you want to play a really good if you want to play a really good tabletop RPG and you don't want to do too much math, and if you want to meet every week and you want to incorporate improv and you want to just sort of build a world together, that's what we wanted to do, and that's what me and my friends do every Wednesday. We've been doing it every Wednesday for the last 10 years. And
yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, honestly, it's so wonderful to know people for a very long amount of time. These are friends from high school. Every person whose name is on the front of this book, we all went to the same high school, and we all just stayed friends, and we all stayed creative, and we made a cool thing that some people enjoy. And that's been Space Kings has been one of the proudest moments of my life, just because every now and then I'll get an email from someone being like, let me tell you about my Space Kings character. And I'm like, yeah.
That is, so I definitely want to go into Space Kings. I have a whole, trust me, we're definitely going to talk about Space Kings. I don't want to jump in. Also for I don't know, I actually don't even know people listen to the podcast version, but we have the books, and that's what that noise was. It was like, I was holding up my copy. It's like, it's like, sometimes I'll listen to podcasts and it's like, well, if you're on the podcast version, you don't know what's going on.
Right.
Space Kings book. So that is awesome. Yeah, Space Kings is fun times. But yeah, so a few other questions I have about the video game design stuff. So I know you did Hack, and then you spent a year making a new game every month. Was that so I just want to talk to you about that a little bit. Was that a personal just like goal to try to do? Was there any like sort of particular reasoning behind that? Like what was your inspiration, or like what was the origin of that idea?
Well, I wish it was a noble thing. Like I wanted to really test myself, and I wanted to get better at finishing things, which those are both true things. But the real reason was I wanted to move out, and I was like, I was already 30, or I was turning 30 or something like that, and I was like, I would like to live in an apartment. And I had a little bit of buzz around my podcast. I had recently just come off of the Space Kings Kickstarter, and I'm like, this is great, but it's going to be a long time until Space Kings comes out, and I really want to move out. I really need some income.
Yeah, that's at some point as an artist, like you have to monetize what you're doing a little bit, right? That's not crazy, but like that's how you become a full-time creator, artist, what have you. Like you have to find ways to pay the bills.
Yeah, and I also noticed that after Hack, it had been a while, and I was working on Space Kings, and I was doing other game type stuff. I did a few game jams, but I noticed that I was becoming more of a podcaster and less of a game developer, and I was like, I love making podcasts, but I did kind of quit my job in order to make games. So I really need to figure out, because I was doing podcasts because I could get paid for them. I was also an editor, and they were advertising Space Kings, and there was a clear monetary connection with podcasts. And again, I love podcasts, but they were paying me, so that's why I was doing them primarily.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And I was like, I gotta make games a bigger portion of my work life, and to do that, I need to figure out how to get paid for them. And a lot of my friends who are artists were having some success on Patreon, and they were like, this seems to be a good way to stay creative and have a good output, and just sort of you'll have an avenue for people to support you if they want to. And I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do a Patreon so soon after a Kickstarter, it's got to be fantastic. It's got to be incredible. So I talked to Joe Keneally, who is my musician for all my games, and I was like, "Hey, we should do a video game every month where you do the music and I do all the other things, and that will be a flashy thing. We'll get buzz, we'll get new people really interested in us, and we'll get paid for it via Patreon." And Joe's like, "Yeah, that sounds awesome. That sounds like he's like, I don't think we can do it, but it sounds really fun. And I'm like, we can do it. And somehow we did make a video game every month in 2022 or no 2020. Man, years are crazy after lockdown.
There's time is irrelevant. Time doesn't exist. Time is a lie.
Yeah, that was the other thing is we started our year of games in 2020 and we were like, this is going to be fine. And then lockdown hit and we were like, uh-oh. I guess we're inside anyway. It's not it'll give us something to focus on. But yeah, it was like lockdown was happening. We were making a game every month. It was a good way to just sort of put my head down and not freak out too bad about like the state of the world and everything. Yeah. But it was a lot of work. I at the end of it, I was like, these are some great ideas, and these are some like I've delivered on a lot of these ideas, and I'm really proud of myself, and I'm now really confident in my ability to finish a thing in a short amount of time, which was it was a good thing to learn.
Yeah, no, I wish I had that ability or learned that. That's a great talent to have.
I think you can only do it by picking up a lot of small projects. It's just a muscle you have to train. And it's also a confidence thing. And it's knowing what to cut and knowing like how to approach an idea. Like some ideas are really good, but they require time, and some ideas are really good and they require deadlines. So it's a good way to learn that. It also grew my Patreon. It got a lot of people interested in my work. And that combined with many other ventures, there are many pillars of my financial stability system, including like passive income from Hack and now the new income from Space Kings. Like that eventually led to me being able to move out and still do all my creative stuff full time.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think what I always thought was so cool is about that kind of project was I play I play music, and I have some friends who are musicians, and like I can remember back in college, like I was in a crappy little like rock band or whatever, but like just sitting down and like writing a song and finishing a song was always kind of an ordeal. But I've always liked the idea of like getting some of my musician friends and just like let's just sit and devote one day to like writing like 2 or 3 songs, make a I can never remember, LP, EP, whatever the shorter one is, like just of like a spontaneous sort of artistic experience, and watching you tweet about all these games and every month, like for me, I was like, man, that's kind of like that idea I've always like really felt from a pure, and this is going to sound super just like an auteur, like from a pure like artistic expression element of just like, man, just really like getting idea, having that sort of deadline and like and doing the thing, you know what I mean? And that's why I was always so impressed to see, because not only were you doing a game, they were all very like different, very unique.
Thank you.
Like they were, you know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh well, here's like a Space Invaders game, and here's like a slightly different Space Invaders game. Like I can remember like watching them and like oh man, this is I think one of them was about, and I should have looked in these more. I apologize, but I remember there was one about food and like it's like someone doing food, and then I think there was one about like cassette tapes and and just like
I think you're thinking of. The first one is probably Princess French Fries, which is sort of a shmup where you fight food. That was my first jam game for 2020, and it kind of we found an interesting style where like Joe would just make a really really long track, and I would like set up like a little shmup level to the track. And like part of the track would be the boss fight, and it was just like one long audio track, and that would be the level design, and I would just sort of fill in sort of like a music video game.
That's clever. Like that's the kind of stuff like you think about, like as you develop these skills, you find ways to like, you make your deadlines or like your restrictions your advantage, right? Princess French Fries, that's right.
Yeah, it's Thank you for saying it's clever. It is there's a lot of cleverness in desperation is the thing.
Well, yeah, that's exactly if that's a quote, man, cleverness and desperation. That's not a motto, man. It should be like 100%.
There's this is some corny shit, but there's a Sun Tzu like passage that's like, okay, so if you've cornered your opponent and you cut off all avenues of escape, they're gonna fight to the death. But if you leave a little opening for them, like, they're not going to fight to the death. They're going to go out the opening, and you can control that opening or whatever. And what my college brain took from that is, oh, I'm the enemy of myself. If I give myself any, like, out, I will take it. Like, I will, if I'm like, well, I could finish this tomorrow, or if I can, if I don't tell anyone about this, then no one will know if I don't release it. And then I just never end up releasing it. So, like, what I found out about me is that if I have a deadline, if I'm really public about my stuff, I can kind of shame myself into finishing things. And it's not the most mentally healthy way of acting, but it has worked for me. And if you, I don't know, if you're trying to get productive, or if you're trying to, like, be more creative or whatever, like, deadlines, being public, like, ways that you can be held accountable for not doing a thing, typically push you into doing a thing more often than not. Depending on your brain type, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, well, that's. I mean, it's I'm gonna say it's from the Matrix, but it's famous. Know thyself, right?
Right.
That's I think one of the hardest, probably one of the biggest struggles, I think artists, and I use the term very loosely, deal with is knowing who you are as an artist in terms of, like, what you can and can't do, your style, and your sort of artistic goals. So for you to have the self-realization relatively early, I would say, in kind of like your life. I think if you think about, like, old masters, maybe not really finding their footing till, like, they're 50, 60 or whatever, but kind of having that realization, especially at just the beginning of the year of games, like, it was probably like a revelation for you, because it really puts you in a mindset to know what you need to do to get things done, right?
Yeah.
So, that's... I think it's a very cleverness is priest desperation. That's I like that. I like that a lot. So that's too funny. So
glad you like that.
But yeah, I don't. I just want to read it for people who didn't. Who don't. Follow Kevin's, like, to be able to create that many, not only different types of games, but to come up with, like, different. I don't know if lore is the right word, but, like, characters and settings. Like, it's beyond, and especially when we go into talk about Space Kings, it doesn't surprise me seeing how that all kind of, like, coalesces now.
Yeah.
But it's certainly a feat. Like, it is certainly is an impressive feat that you should feel very proud of.
Well, thank you. My lore is definitely developed on the fly more often than not. In a lot of my jam games, it's first idea, best idea. I drew like. I didn't know what to do for the first jam, so I just started drawing French fries and hamburgers and stuff like that. And I found a cool color palette. I'm like, what color palette will let me draw something tasty? And I was like, this is cute and fun. I'll make a shmup where you're a princess who fights French fries or whatever. It's just like, what do I naturally want to create? How do I hone that? How do I make sure that I'm embarrassed enough to finish this?
Well, I think that's, if that's what it takes, that's, I think just having that realization for you was, it definitely paid off. So the last thing I wanted to talk about real fast, at least in the video game sort of world, I believe you have coming up in about a month or so is the grab bag jam.
Yeah.
So I just, it looked kind of like a thing. I just wondered if you wanted to kind of talk about it for people who might be interested in such a thing, or how that kind of works, and, like, how to get involved.
Sure. So the Super Try Grab Bag Jam, which you can find right now at jam.supertrystudios.com, is a game jam in a very, very loose sense. So in my year of games, I did 2 months where I asked my patrons for theme suggestions, and they gave me, like, one-word little video game themed suggestions, and I looked at all of them, and I was like, I can't choose one. I'm just going to try and incorporate as many of these themes as possible into a game. So that got me Outfoxed and Hot Soul Laser Beam, which you can find both of those at supertry.itch.io if you want to check out the games. But so I was like, this is great. Like, I love being able to, like, pick some themes and ignore some themes, and, like, have people sort of, like, interpret which themes I used. And I was like, that was fun. And then I had other projects for 2 years, and now we're in 2023, and I'm like, I should do a jam. What's the easiest what's the easiest way I can get people involved in creative, and so I started Supertry Grab Bag Jam. It starts February 1st of 2023, and it ends just before April 1st of 2023. So you have a 2-month window. I do not expect anyone to work those whole 2 months. Just if you want to make stuff, take it at your own pace. On February 1st, I'll post all of the themes, and you can think about a thing you want to make. And I'm not limiting the jam to games. If you want to write poems, or if you want to write music, or if you want to make art, or tell stories, or make game assets, or do whatever you want, you can join the jam. I don't really get anything from this apart from your attention, which I get is very valuable. Don't get me wrong.
That's, for
but
sure.
If basically I recognize that I am very creative and productive, and that jam, game jams on itch have helped me realize that. But I haven't seen a lot of jams that have a more laid back approach to it. And I think it can be kind of hard to commit to a jam being like, it's only this weekend. You only get 48 hours. And it's like, but I have a child, or I have a job, or, I might get COVID or whatever. Like, a million different things can happen to you. So if you want to if you want to spread those 48 hours out across 2 months and join the jam, or if you want to just do 2 hours and be like, oh, I made a cool thing. Making things is fun. Check out the Supertry Grab Bag Jam. You can sign up at jam.supertrystudios.com. It's on itch. It's always worth it to make an itch account. There are lots of great games on there, including mine. Maybe maybe you'll make something cool, and I'll look at it and be like, that's cool, man. Like, that shouldn't be the reason you do it, because again, I'm just a dum-dum. I'm just a nobody person on the internet. But if mostly I'm making it so other people can make a thing with me, and I'm trying to be more open about the stuff I do on Patreon, because for the last 2 years I've kind of been just working on these secret little multi-month projects on my Patreon, because I didn't want anyone to think I was slacking on Space Kings or whatever by releasing all my other stuff. So I've kept quiet, but Space Kings is out now, so I'm trying to be a little louder about the stuff I make on my Patreon, which you can find at givekevinmoney.com if you want to give me some money.
I'll definitely link that in the show notes and all that kind of good stuff.
Sure.
For sure.
What I usually say is, if you followed me here and you like my stuff, and you have a dollar lying around, please visit kevinmoney.com. If this is your first time meeting me, I do not expect you to give me any money. I'm not I know I'm charming, but I'm I'm not that charming. So if you want to play some of my free games and listen to some of my podcasts, that would be really, really cool. But don't feel like you're expected to give me money. I am not like some strange king that you need to pay tribute to.
It's like, hello, yes, please, I have made you these games. Give me your money.
Yeah. If givekevinmoney.com sounds presumptuous to you, you're not ready for givekevinmoney.com.
Yeah. If you're not ready for the Kevin, if you see that address, you're like, I don't know, I don't like the sound of it. It's hilarious. It's very funny. I think it's very clever.
Thank you.
Okay, so aside obviously from video games, as we've kind of alluded to, you're also a tabletop RPG game designer, which, as someone who dabbled in trying to create some card games, let me tell you, people, it is not easy. Hand in hand with your game and a lot of the podcasts you let's jump in. Space Kings. Space Kings is a tabletop RPG role-playing game, an improvisational one. I've tried to am I going to say this word correctly? Improvisational.
Yeah,
long word.
It's an improv. You can shorten it. Everyone does.
It's for me. Okay, so when I first found this game through you guys playing it on Pretend Fence, which we'll talk about Pretend Fence in a bit, but this game is, as kind of being the guy who I have my friends I've had since high school as well, and they're all into nerdy stuff like I am, but they are not as nerdy as I am. So when I'm like, oh, we should try Dungeons and Dragons, or we should try whatever, they're like, yeah, sure, but I have to be the one that does all the sort of legwork, right?
Right.
So Dungeons and Dragons is fun, it's cool, it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, yeah.
Right. So when I saw you guys playing this game, and I was just blown away about not only the level of complexity in terms of the characters, but the ease of gameplay itself. So why don't you, as the creator, why don't you kind of give me the I guess it's gonna sound kind of salesy. Like, what's the elevator pitch when you tell people what is Space Kings? Like, how does it work? Like, what kind of system is it?
Sure. So Space Kings, again, it's an improvisational role playing game. It uses playing cards instead of dice. The idea is that there's very little math. You're usually just adding 2 numbers on your character sheet together. The whole sheet is 1 page. You can look at the character sheet, and there are little notes on it that tell you how to fill out your character, so you don't have to constantly be referencing a book. We tried to really ride this line of as simple as possible, only including complexity where complexity made the game richer. So the basics of Space Kings are easy. You have a character. That character has attributes and skills. You fill in little dots, and then you're going to tell your host, which is what we call the game master. You're going to tell your host the things you want your character to do. And if it's a tough thing, they're going to say, okay, you want to punch a door down. Okay, give me brawn and melee. You add those things together. You reveal cards from the top of your deck. You've just done a Space Kings. In Space Kings, everything is playing cards. So, and you keep your discard pile around. So when you do an action, you flip cards off the top of your. I really want to say library since this is a bad.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, you flip cards off the top of your deck, and faces and aces are successes. 1 success is like bare minimum. 2 successes is pretty good. 3 successes is great, and up from there. 6 successes, you're cutting a spaceship in half with a sword. So
I'm just thinking about that very exact thing.
that is an iconic pretend friends moment.
Yes, it is. Classic Kill Cat.
Classic Kill Cat. So that's basically it. Your cards that you flip go into your graveyard, aka discard pile, and you can kind of count cards as you go. If you're seeing a lot of successes early on, that's great, but that means you're burning all your success cards. Your comeuppance is coming. You're in a tragic hero arc, essentially.
Yes.
When you don't see a lot of successes, it's not like your character's going to be like useless for the whole game. You're just like, oh, my character's building up to something because there are going to be a lot of successes at the bottom of my deck right now.
Yep.
Also hiding in the deck, and I think it's everyone's favorite mechanic, are 2 jokers. And jokers allow the host to wrest control of your intent and action and add a little chaos to the scene. So you might want to knock down a door because there's treasure behind it or something or whatever. So maybe you flip a bunch of cards, knock down that door, and you get a bunch of successes and a joker. So heck yeah, you knock down that door, but behind it is a ton of guards with guns, and they've all got their guns trained on you. And it's like the joker is where the host gets to add in their own little like spicy like, yes, you do it. However,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the genius a lot of time of the game, it's a very social, and I would probably say low-key, just fun way to hang out with your friends. And like the genius of the jokers is it gives you always something in the back of your mind where like at any point something will and can go wrong.
Right.
To a degree with Dungeons and Dragons, like obviously the Dungeon Master can control the story as how he wants, but in theory, if everyone's just rolling really well, like they may not encounter a trap, or they may do everything what they want to do. But as you play Space Kings, and you kind of, like you kind of said, you kind of count your cards. You kind of know, man, I haven't hit a joker in a while. Like I gotta, you can metagame it a little bit, or you can just YOLO it and just do whatever and just kind of see what happens. And I think the best memories or the best kind of scenarios happen where like, oh, you try to do something. I have a lot of my friends when we play. Some of the guys will try to be super action hero man, and they'll hit a joker or 2 jokers, and then everything just goes to hell. Yeah. And I think that innate mechanic of the game is really what makes it kind of an enjoyable experience for everyone, because it's just like you said, kind of the controlled chaos is a really fun way to experience it.
And there's a little bit of a hubris element too, because you can make a big beefy dude with like 4 brawn and like 12 hit points and like full up melee, and you could be flipping like 12 or 13 cards every time you do one of your big like sweaty punches. But the more cards you flip, the more likely you're going to get successes, yeah, but also the more likely you are to overturn jokers. So there's like a hubris sort of thing. So if you rely too much on your big skills, you might flip that joker that explodes the space station or whatever. But it's always maybe not like always a smart. It's maybe not always a smart idea to like flip low intentionally, or be like, can I, maybe my dumb Punchy Man has like a thought, or he tries hacking or something. But it can always be a fun like metagame moment that kind of fits like narratively well, I think, to do a low roll in Space Kings, or a low flip, whatever we call it. I don't know. I just made the game. I don't remember.
Whatever. It's whatever it's whatever you want it to be. Right? And like it. It's again, it's a game where you can metagame, right? You can do that in Dungeons and Dragons as well. You can like, well, let's see, I'm really, if you're a wizard, like I'm really good at like wisdom and arcana. So like you try to focus your actions relative to thinking that's what the dungeon master is going to want to see. Mm-hmm. But I think that the real fun of the game is just doing what it's really the role playing aspect. It's just like trying to play out your character in a way that's you think they would act regardless of like what your flips are going to be,
right?
And I think that really is like and the kind of the beauty of the game is you can play the game relatively serious. Like the sessions I've been doing with my friends have been like a relatively quote unquote serious game where all their characters are one of them's like a space samurai guy, and one of them is like an octopus pirate.
Yeah.
One of them is like a soldier of fortune. So it's kind of a serious game.
Yeah.
But you could go through and you could just make wacky characters and just have a fun time with it too. And the way the game is kind of designed, and as the game controller, dungeon master, what have you, you can just kind of affect the game in ways to propel it forward in a fun and still interesting way.
Yeah, and we don't put a whole lot of restrictions on your characters. Basically, the biggest one is your stats can only go from 1 to 4. But you can, you can make anything that's the size of a large human. is basically the bounding box for your character. So like, it's cool seeing like characters that are amorphous clouds, or like characters that are like a couple of small aliens in a trench coat, or characters that are just like, let's make a silly, visually interesting character that's just a walrus man or something, and then that walrus man will go on to have like the most like deep and interesting and sad character arc you've ever seen. Just because the longer you play, the more you kind of like, we encourage people to take notes and sort of like keep tabs on something. If you do like a throwaway joke that references your backstory, someone should write that down, because maybe there's like a story potential in there somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. How long did it take you to like kind of create? I guess was it like you had a initial version and you refined it, or has this been like kind of a building blocks of game? Like what was like the inception of the game? Like how did it kind of come about as you were designing it? I guess
we wrapped up our so. We started a 4th edition campaign. Halfway through that 4th edition campaign, we changed all of the mechanics to be sort of a White Wolf 4th edition mashup. It was terrible, but we wrote out the rest of the campaign, and I was like, okay, maybe making game mods is not my strong suit, but I can come up with something like so in between. So we wrapped it up on 1 week, and I was like, let's try something new. I'll just throw something together in a week. And I think I had a week to put it together, and I think I put it together in 2 days. Is just the idea of let's figure it out. And I didn't overthink it. I just kind of decided we would find whatever was fun about it. And I showed up with like a couple of mechanics and, again, a character sheet made in Microsoft Paint or whatever, and I was like, let's just, let's all try and get along and maybe find a tabletop game in all this for a while, because we don't have anything better to do, and we had enough, and the first couple of sessions were magic, like they were great, like, and it was, and I was like, well, is this like really fun because of us? Or is this really fun because the system is light? And I'm like, maybe those don't have to be two different things. So from there, it was just a multi-year process of like, we'd finish a season and I'd take all my notes of everything we did in that season and be like, okay, well, this clearly doesn't work. Like, I think when we started out, dodge was a number you had to beat in order to hit a thing. And that didn't work out very well. So we tried many different variations of how dodge worked, until we ended up on like the Halo shield mechanic we have in the final game. We tried ultimates, and like I keep track of ultimates are like special rules for your character. They're sort of like feats in 3rd edition or whatever. They're just like special things you can do that are very mechanics heavy. And everybody gets 2 of them. And so I'd like write ultimates just sort of off the cuff, like what feels flavorful. And then it wasn't until a couple years in that I actually understood the game we were playing, and I was like, oh, okay. So here's the thesis on ultimates is anything that could be done with ultimates have to break rules. Anything that can be done via a player's creativity alone, that's not good ultimate material. It has to be something crunchy and mechanical. And that's kind of where like the Magic cards influence sort of seeps into Space Kings, because I love the design of Magic cards. I have listened to at least 3 Mark Rosewater podcast, the Drive to Work podcasts, and
it's funny because that guy he's gonna hit like 1,000, I think. But it's crazy how many, and they're actually I'm sure to that point too, as someone who dabbles or would like to dabble, they're very interesting.
They're always really interesting.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I love his storm scale write-ups too. Like those are always the most fascinating things to me. But it wasn't until like 4 years of play testing when I finally sort of understood like how to design ultimates, and that led to me being like, okay, well, how do I what's a good way to design like a crunchier sort of side of this? So like that's where combat NPCs came from. Combat NPCs were basically invented because I was like, all right, we're ready to show the world Space Kings. The Continue guys are on board to do this podcast with me. Mark Rosewater says like, you gotta have something for everyone. Don't give anyone a reason to turn away from your thing. And I'm like,
yep.
I like crunchier tabletop RPG stuff from time to time. How can I sort of include that as more of an option, because my group enjoys a looser style, or they've kind of come around to the more crunchy aspects of Space Kings after I designed them, so that was very gratifying. But it took a very long time, but it's one of the best things in my entire life that I have a group of friends that I eat pizza and play make pretend with every week. Like that's like the greatest, most important thing I've ever done, is give my friends a reason to meet up every week and hang out and make each other laugh. So the development of Space Kings was an absolute joy. Putting the book together was really tough, but I had some great help from my friends Hadley St. Clair, Brian Shepard, and Brian Townsend. Brian Shepard did all the art. He's been my best friend since 7th grade, maybe 6th grade. I think it was 6th grade. We've been friends a really long time. Brian Townsend was my senpai. He was my upperclassman in high school, and he did all the layout. And he's always been just like a guiding star for like what's too complicated or what's not fun or whatever. He's always just has a great sense of design in all sorts of ways. And Hadley St. Clair just like figured out what the soul of Space Kings was before I could. And we all put everything we had for 3 years over pandemic. We did as much as we could, passing the book back and forth, just trying to figure out what it needed, what we could do, and how to do that, equitably. So it took a really long time because basically we're 4 directors and we'd run out of stuff to do in our sphere of influence, and we'd like throw the book back to another director, and that director would figure it out. So it was a little bit, we were like, if we could add a 5th member, we'd add a project manager next time.
There you go.
So that's basically the development history of Space Kings. Is we're a bunch of friends. We wanted to hang out together, and we thought it would be a good idea if other people could do that as well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the book is awesome. I was already playing the game before you even announced the book, but the book looks gorgeous. The book is actually super helpful in terms of just getting started and like just overcoming, writing block or mental blocks for advancing the story, creating characters, creating scenarios.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And just if you're interested in Space Kings, is it spacekings.space?
Spacekings.space is where you can find the digital book. The hardcover, full color book is at book.spacekings.space if you want to check that out. If you'd like a little bit more of a preview, you can check out Pretend Friends. We're on all the things. Like we're on YouTube, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify. So yeah, if you want to hear us play Space Kings, we have 4 seasons of it right now. We're working on the 4th. There's you can jump in pretty much anywhere you like, and you can hear us play some Space Kings. We do a lot of Space Kings mods as well. The 2nd season of Pretend Friends is a fantasy sort of mod of Space Kings led by Hadley St. Clair, and that's a lot of people's favorite season is our fantasy one. I get to play a troll in that one, so that is it's very
so okay. Let's talk about Pretend Friends because
sure.
I know you say you can jump in there if you are interested in Space Kings and you are interested in hilarious podcasting and tabletop adventures. Do yourself a favor. Start with season 1 of Pretend Friends.
Thank you. Wow.
It is, I said it's how I was. I think really fell in love with Kevin and all that he does and his work as a GM, and then the Continue guys. So it's funny. So Pretend Friends is I guess it's a tabletop RPG podcast.
Yeah, an actual play.
The actual play. They use the Space King system. That's where I was introduced to it.
Yep.
And season 1 has Kevin as the I keep wanting to say dungeon master, game master,
host, whatever.
Host. There you go. And the 3 main characters are the Continue, the guys who do the Continue YouTube channel, which we kind of touched on earlier. So Continue is his own YouTube video game channel. Mm-hmm. Those guys themselves are awesome, hilarious, super cool dudes. And the first season is you get introduced to, it's Killcat,
Davil, and Space,
and Space. Space freely.
Space freely,
Space freely. And it is just, seeing how easy it is to jump in and start playing, but the depths to the world that they create, I think for me was the real draw. It was, you can tell and this is, I think there's a good amount of episodes in every season, but it's a pretty all-encompassing storyline. Excuse me.
Thanks. Yeah, that's all a blur to me because again, I finished Hack and that was a big project and went right into Space King. So, we went right into Pretend Friends season 1 and there are like over 50 episodes in season 1, I think, or something, or maybe 30. I don't even know.
There's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. And it's all, it's all like, it's interesting, it's adventure, but it's hilarious. Like that's really I had so many times where I was laughing out loud just of the thing, because again, since it's depending on how you want to play it, it's those guys tend to be or have been doing kind of game what's it called?
It's sort of Let's Plays, mostly just YouTube-y, hangout style stuff.
Yeah, but shorts and what's the word where you do silly skits and stuff? I don't know. Just that kind of that's always been the sort of world. So it's funny, it's a fun and funny adventure.
Yeah, we don't skimp on the table talk at all. We'll break character and we'll go off on tangents or whatever because we're just a bunch of friends hanging out. We do tell a story. We do eventually get around to telling a story and doing character stuff and all that. But I think one of the strengths is I don't think you can listen to Pretend Friends and be like, wow, these guys are masters of the craft. And it's no, we're really funny guys. We're not we're not Critical Role level professionals. We're funny dudes and we're friends and we're trying to tell a story and we're trying to, kind of care about it. So,
yeah. Season 2, like you mentioned, was kind of a modded version where it went from sci-fi to fantasy.
Yep.
And you got to join in the fun there as Snorkel.
I did. I love being able to play the game.
So that's always my problem is I always have to kind of, so being able to play is like, oh, I get to play, like I don't have to. I've been trying to like see if anyone in my friend group wants to try to run a thing because I would like to play, but
Spacekings is pretty easy as a first time host. I gotta say, we got a lot of people in my friend group trained up on DMing and game mastering and all that, and they started with Space Kings, and it's very, you do have to pay attention. You do have to, you do have to like maybe like come in with like a Netflix description of like the episode you're trying to do, but we definitely try to get you to plan the exact right amount that you won't be sad when the game's over.
Yeah. And season 2 is hosted by, like you had mentioned, Hadley St. Clair. Hadley St. Clair. Hadley St. Clair.
Yeah.
Long day. Who I think Hadley's so cool. Like I don't know why. Every time I hear her, I'm like, Hadley's the best. Like she's so funny. And
they're great.
Just her trying to like wrangle the four of you is, you can always just hear like the delighted exasperation times where like someone will propose something to do and she'll just be like, okay, and it's like that stuff just made it so engaging and entertaining. Like it was such a fun experience.
It was a good dynamic. They're really awesome at wrangling us, and I don't know. They've been one of my best friends for a really long time. We met in like French class in high school, and they're just they're great. Getting them on to do the I was like, we might do. Because they had hosted at our weekly group a few times, and we made Hack together. They wrote the whole story for Hack and came up with the characters and all that. And I was like, we're thinking of doing fantasy for the next one, and they were like, well, I should be the host for that. And I'm like, yeah. I can play. I can play the game. So
I'm sure you appreciate that a great deal.
Yeah.
Being able to jump in. Again, season 3, you returned back to hosting duties.
Mm-hmm.
Another return to the sci-fi flair. Just right back in the saddle. Probably one of my favorite seasons. Just with the overarching.
Thank you.
Kind of storyline that don't want to spoil too much, but I think the ending or last episode was. I think I actually tweeted everyone. It was almost like. I was a little verklempt. I was sad to hear it come to a finish because you kind of get invested with these characters and like this story, and it was a good time. And even
one of my main reasons to keep creating stuff and to keep staying relevant is so we can keep making episodes of Pretend Friends. We went on a little bit of a hiatus after season 3, just because I was like, okay, I really got to finish this book now, and. The Continue guys are all like super creative guys. Are all doing all kinds of stuff, and we tried to get season 4 started for like I think it took us like 2 years to like get back to finally be like, okay, well, Continue guys are busy, are going through a long stretch of being busy, and like I finally have free time. So season 4 we started a couple months ago, and it's with the book crew. Hadley now gets to be a player, and we've also brought in Brian Shepard, our artist, and Brian Townsend, our layout guy, and we're Pretend Friends for this season.
Yeah, and you know what? The season 4 has been no loss in momentum. Xylobro, I think, is hilarious. I think.
Oh, thanks.
The way they Hadley does the Xylobro accent is, I always laugh. I will say I can't. Okay, so there's Bert Circles, and then
Diggum Honeysuckle is Brian Shepard's
Diggum Honeysuckle. Every time he just the voice just gets me, like it makes me giggle. Like it's just like it totally nails that perfect kind of like adolescent.
Yep.
Immortal vampire. It's perfect. So
he's great. Brian has been my improv partner. He ran the improv club in high school and in college. So we've been doing improv stuff together forever. I am so improv understudied that like my first pass of every Pretend Friends edit these days is me cutting out all the breaks, all of me like laughing too much at Brian. But like, yeah, it's really fun to make. And everyone was really supportive. It's always it's always a little nerve-wracking to be like, hey, this thing you like, well, we're changing it. But I really, the book was out and I wanted people to like know about Space Kings, and the timing didn't work out for the Continue guys, but I'm like, maybe we can still do Pretend Friends. And so far I don't think we've pissed anyone off too much. I think people still really like Pretend Friends, so that's really gratifying to know.
Being a fan of the Continue guys, but like being a Pretend Friends fan, it has not, in my opinion, has not lost any momentum. It's just like it's a different story, a different set of people, and it's still just as entertaining as the previous season. So, again, please keep on doing all the good work that you and please tell your friends, some random dude that you met on the internet has loved not only the book but just the content you guys have been putting out, and I just continue to look forward to see what you do. So
thank you so much. It really does like hit with me whenever I hear it. I'm a normal human person. Like, I can get in a rut and I can get like depressed about, the state of the world and things I make sometimes, but genuinely hearing that like people like my stuff, or that the things I make help them or whatever, that's like, it really helps me. So thank you for saying that.
Well, I understand, again, as someone who's done, photography, whatever, it makes a difference when someone can appreciate the work, because like, a little bit of yourself goes into everything you do, right? So being able to kind of like have it affect people in a positive way, I think I'm glad I can tell you like, hey, this is an awesome thing. Like keep doing these awesome things.
Yeah.
I think you're on the right track. I think you're doing great work. So
yeah, I like cooking for myself, obviously. Like I have to do it to survive, but it's fun to cook for somebody and have them be like, that was delicious. It's like, yeah, I made a good thing.
Exactly. Yes, I haven't done that for a while with my wife. I try, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
As long as you got one recipe that you can whip out.
I know. That's true. She does like my crock pot ribs, so that's kind of my go-to. So I know. All right, Kevin. So again, thank you so much for coming on. I don't want to take up too much for your time.
Sure.
Before we kind of wrap up, two last things. So what I like to do when I have my guests on, I have them pick a charity of their choice, and I like to just kind of make a donation as just a kind of, again, goodwill, community building sort of thing. You chose an awesome awesome and I think relevant charity, Commons for Kids.
Yeah.
It looks like somewhere you can send bulk singles of all sorts of like trading card games for basically to get into the hands of kids who maybe don't have access to just cards to play with. It's kind of what I was looking at.
Yeah, so basically you can send I think they accept most trading cards, and anything that like is not kid appropriate they'll just like sell or figure out something to do to buy more commons. It's not like a type of charity that you can write off your taxes or anything like that. But I think the only reason I am a programmer right now, because I took programming classes in school, but I got B's in them, and they were like, programming's really more for A students. And I was like, okay, well, you're a teacher and I'm a child, so that makes sense. But the thing when I became an adult and I wanted to make video games still, and I was like, well, maybe I could be a programmer. The thing that helped me most of all learn to program was Magic the Gathering. It was like there were all these little programming elements to Magic the Gathering that I didn't even realize. So
that makes a lot of sense, actually, when you talk about just probably logical statements and how things triggers interact. Yeah.
Or even just like the turn phases, or like when or priority or things like that. Like these are all things that like if you're programming are really like vital and helpful to know, and you can get sort of a soft education in programming through playing Magic the Gathering. And I'm a big proponent of we should be teaching kids how to program in schools. We should have as much opportunity for programming as possible, but barriers are there. I think maybe like a really good thing we can do to let kids have at least a little bit of a leg up is, everybody's got common cards in their library, in their in their attic or whatever, that you're never going to put in a deck. Like, you're just not going to do it. Like, either they're bad, or they're maybe they're just bad. Maybe they're just like vanilla creatures or whatever. And like Ruxa exists or whatever, so you could make a vanilla creatures deck, but you don't need all of them. So like, the idea of this, I think, is great. You box up your cards, you send them to this guy, and he finds a way to get them to kids who can like learn how to play Magic. And if you learn how to play Magic, hey, you've just made math fun.
So what I'm going to do is I'll definitely grab some of my bulk. I'll go out. I'm going to buy 2 brand new Commander decks as well. I'll throw those in there. I'll send those out just to kind of, again, get more people into the game we all love. So that's like a small thing. Again, I think it's a great cause. It's an awesome way to kind of help kids, and just for the reasons I think it's funny because I am a failed ICS major from college. I took my first programming class, and I was like, oh, I did like HTML when I was in high school. It was not for me. But I do think that they need to introduce kind of programming as a younger age. I think that's an opportunity for a lot of kids that they just don't get exposed to it early enough they probably should. So I really like any excuse to get kids to start playing Magic earlier. Like, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Why not?
Just be careful which precons you put in there, because we don't need any more Atraxa players. I think
no, that's it's not even, I'm not trying to make psychopaths, man.
That's coming from an Infect player, so
there you go. So I will get that going, and then lastly, what I do is I'm going to use the power of video editing. I'm going to pop up what I like to call my community board. So I'm just going to go like this. And then what I like to do with my guests is, and I always talk about kind of community and building community and being able to support my people I have on even after the interview is over. So I'm going to be joining your Patreon. So that way the Show and Tell Show will be able to continue to help further your artistic endeavors as you go forth and create awesome tabletop games, video games, whatever you're doing. Like I said, I think you've done some incredible work. I think you've created some multiple impressive, just games and ways for people to kind of interact and have fun and just have good times. And I think as someone who never is personally content with being a creator, like seeing someone like you, like something that I strive to be is like, okay, Kevin's doing it. Like that's a goal I want to kind of accomplish. So this is literally like the one kind of way I can kind of help keep supporting you in your efforts. And as a small, just thank you for having such a big influence on my life and my friends' lives, and giving us this sort of game. So we'll get that going. I'll link all this stuff below. But again, if you're interested in Space Kings, please check out the website, spacekings.space. The digital version, get the book. Like I said, the hardcover. I know if I'm not lazy, I'll pop a real picture of it on the screen through Video Magic.
Nice.
Check it out and have fun. Send Kevin your wacky characters. It's the character creation. Like most games, it's like Skyrim. You spend 4 hours creating a character, and then you make a sneak archer again, whatever. But at least your guy looks super cool. Like it's like a life-size Garfield or something. Like, that's awesome. Kevin, again, thank you so much for coming on, and I look forward to I'm really looking forward to the next episode of Pretend Friends. That's going to be my next big thing, and then whatever the future has for you, I can't wait to see.
Drew, thank you so much. If you ever want to have me back on again, I'd love to preach the good word of mono black elves. So you have that to look forward to. But yes, thank you so much for all the kind words, and thank you for having me here. I really, really appreciate it.
Of course. And if you're listening, if you're new to the show, not new to the show, if you want to subscribe on YouTube, that's cool. If you want to, I don't know what else people do, follow on Instagram or Twitter, I'll have all that linked below. Find Kevin. Kevin's super cool as well. We'll have all his stuff linked, all his links below. And Kevin, I will definitely have you on some point in the future. And thanks for coming on, and I guess we'll see you all next time.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.